Caitlin Clark's sophomore season has unraveled in just 13 games: quad strain, groin setbacks, bone bruise, and now it's over. Was this collapse inevitable, or did lax officiating, mismanagement, and league complacency help push the WNBA's brightest star off the court and potentially drag the sport's momentum down with her? Caitlin Clark was supposed to be the story of the season, the Rookie of the Year frontrunner, the savior of the Indiana Fever, the ratings magnet who could single-handedly lift the WNBA into mainstream cultural relevance. From the moment she stepped onto the professional stage, the league felt different, louder, bigger, more urgent. Her jersey sold out, her games were broadcast on primetime slots, and ticket demand exploded. She was not just another #1 pick, she was the phenomenon. But then came the injuries. First, whispers of a strain, then nagging groin issues, then a bone bruise that compounded the toll. And finally, the devastating announcement: Clark would miss the remainder of the season. Just 13 games in, the story flipped from celebration to cautionary tale. This script is about more than one athlete's setback. It's about the collision between talent and system. It's about a league learning, perhaps too late, that its success depends on how it protects its stars. It's about how momentum can turn into backlash, how opportunity can be squandered by mismanagement, and how a single player's fragility exposes the fragility of the entire structure around her. From the moment Caitlin Clark declared for the WNBA draft, the ripple effects were felt across sports. The Fever hadn't been relevant for years, but her selection changed everything overnight. Season tickets sold out. Media outlets that had barely glanced at the WNBA before suddenly sent reporters. ESPN didn't just cover games, they highlighted practices. Her impact was immediate and measurable. The Fever's average attendance the season before her rivals sat at just over 4,000 per game. With Clark, that number skyrocketed to more than 17,000. Home games turned into spectacles. Away games turned into must-see roadshows. Entire arenas filled simply because Caitlin Clark was on the court. The league as a whole shattered records. Total attendance across the season reached a 0.5 million, an all-time high, with 7 teams averaging more than 10.0 per game. Clark was the anchor, the gravitational pull making casual fans tune in. Television ratings told the same story. Her draft drew record-breaking numbers. Her debut game became the most-watched regular season WNBA broadcast into decades. And this wasn't just hype, it was transformation. Sponsors wanted in, networks expanded coverage, merchandise sales hit all-time highs. And for the first time, a rookie's jersey rivaled veteran legends. Clark didn't just play. She turned the WNBA into a cultural conversation. Everywhere she went, the Caitlin Clark effect followed. Airports, arenas, and autograph lines swarmed. For a league fighting for relevance, she was a marketing dream, a player whose highlights went viral, whose name became a household staple, and whose presence instantly elevated the valuation of her franchise. But the brighter the spotlight, the heavier the expectations. Clark wasn't just asked to play basketball. She was asked to carry a league. And that kind of burden comes with a cost. The first signs came quietly in May. Clark was reported to be dealing with a quadriceps strain. It was brushed off, just part of the grind of transitioning from college to the pros. After all, she had carried a massive workload at Iowa, logging heavy minutes through Deaton tournament runs. But then the whispers grew louder. By June, she was visibly slower, grimacing at times, and dealing with groin issues that nagged at her every move. These weren't isolated knocks. They were the kinds of injuries that pile up when a body has no time to recover. She kept playing. Of course she did. There was pressure. Fans had bought tickets months in advance to see her. Networks had scheduled broadcasts around her presence. The Fever's business model was built around her availability. Missing games wasn't just about recovery. It meant disappointing thousands, maybe millions. By July, the situation worsened. The groin issues hadn't healed, and then came the devastating development, a bone bruise. This wasn't something you could just tape up and push through. Each game she played risked compounding the damage. And after just 13 appearances, where she still averaged 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds, she was shut down for the season. It was heartbreaking. For fans, yes, but especially for Clark herself. After years of dreaming about this moment, she barely had time to settle in. She went from filling arenas and dropping double-doubles to sitting on the sidelines, watching her team fight on without her. The emotional toll was enormous. Fans flooded social media, some devastated, others angry. Promotional campaigns built around her name suddenly felt hollow. Clips of her early season highlights were replayed like nostalgic memories, instead of promises of what's to come, and yet, beneath the surface, a harder question was whispered. Did she have to reach this point? Was she overexposed, overplayed, and underprotected? Did the pressure to keep the machine running contribute to the very injuries that derailed the season? Here's where the conversation turned sharp. Because while injuries are part of the game, many fans and analysts pointed fingers not at Clark's workload, but at the way the league let her be treated on the court, game after game. Clark was targeted with physicality, hard screens, body checks, arms across the face. It seemed relentless, and time after time, officials swallowed their whistles. Clips circulated of her being knocked down without calls. Entire online threads were dedicated to tracking how often referees ignored blatant fouls against her. This wasn't just fan conspiracy. Coaches and commentators noticed too. Stephanie White and other analysts publicly remarked that Clark was taking unnecessary punishment, and the numbers backed up concerns. The WNBA's officiating crew is underpaid, part-time, and inconsistently trained compared to other professional leagues. That inconsistency has real consequences, especially when a league's biggest star is left vulnerable. It wasn't about favoritism. Fans weren't asking for Clark to get superstar treatment. They were asking for her to get basic protection, the kind any player deserves. When you let opponents hack at your marquee star without consequence, you're not just risking injury, you're risking the credibility of your product. The problem wasn't isolated. The WNBA has long struggled with officiating standards, with players and coaches alike calling for reforms, but in Clark's case, the stakes were higher. Every missed call didn't just hurt her stat line, it put her at risk, physically and professionally. This wasn't one bad night of refereeing, it was a systemic failure. And it left fans asking the same question: how could the league be so short-sighted as to let their most valuable asset be battered game after game? The effects of Clark's absence were immediate and visible. Television numbers told the story first. Games featuring the Fever on national broadcasts saw viewership dip by more than 50%. Once Clark was sidelined, for networks that had banked on her star power, the difference was stark. Asterisk ticket markets followed. The average resale price for marquee Fever games like a matchup against the Dallas Wings dropped from around $190 to closer to $115. After the injury announcement, fans weren't paying premium prices anymore without the guarantee of seeing Clark in action, and yet, the paradox emerged. While Clark's absence hurt, the league as a whole wasn't collapsing. ESPN ratings were still slightly up overall. ABC's broadcasts saw double-digit growth, and new franchises like the Golden State Valkyries sold out arenas. The league had found resilience in expansion and broader growth. But the message was clear: Clark's presence supercharged everything. Without her, momentum slowed. With her, the WNBA had a cultural phenomenon. It highlighted just how fragile star dependence can be and how mismanagement of those stars can directly affect the bottom line. The Fever and the WNBA attempted to soften the blow. Indiana's general manager, Amber Cox, emphasized that the decision was about protecting Clark's long-term health, insisting the priority was her future, not short-term gains. But fans weren't convinced. They wanted transparency. Why had her injuries been downplayed for so long? Why hadn't the league stepped in to protect her? Why were vague day-to-day updates given until the situation spiraled into a lost season? Even without Clark, fans still came. In Baltimore, the Fever drew strong crowds, proving that interest in women's basketball wasn't limited to a single star. But the bitterness remained. It felt like the league had fumbled an opportunity by failing to safeguard its brightest star. So what now? Caitlin Clark is expected to return in 2026, fully recovered and ready to pick up where she left off. Her comeback will be one of the most anticipated in WNBA history. Fans have already circled the calendar not just in Indiana, but across the league. Her re-entry isn't just about another rookie year reboot. It's about reclaiming the story that was cut short, picking up the thread where injury forced the pause button, and proving that her star power wasn't a flash but a foundation. The Fever, surprisingly, have managed to stay in playoff contention. Even without her, a sign of resilience that suggests her eventual return could elevate them into true contenders. This matters. For years, Indiana had been a basement dweller, struggling for relevance. With Clark, they instantly looked like a franchise reborn. Without her, they've managed to stay competitive, scrapping for wins, finding ways to keep the fan base engaged. That means when Clark does return, she won't be stepping into another rebuilding year, she'll be stepping into a roster that has developed grit, chemistry, and a hunger to prove themselves. That's the perfect stage for a comeback narrative, but this is bigger than one player and one team. The league itself faces a crossroads. Expansion is thriving. The Golden State Valkyries, the highly anticipated Bay Area franchise, are selling out games before their first season even fully unfolds. They've tapped into a market that has long been hungry for professional women's basketball, and the response has been electric. On the other coast, established dynasties like the Las Vegas Aces continue to show what a modern super team looks like, complete with sold-out arenas, celebrity fans courtside, and back-to-back titles that feel more like an NBA storyline than a niche league. Media coverage, too, continues to grow. ESPN, ABC, Amazon, and other broadcasters are investing more heavily than ever before. Social media platforms are buzzing with highlights, commentary, and debates that would have been unimaginable just 5 years ago. Even casual sports fans now recognize names like A'ja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and of course, Caitlin Clark. Women's basketball is no longer an afterthought, it's part of the mainstream sports conversation. Yet the lesson lingers. The WNBA has a choice: to protect its stars, to reform its officiating, to manage injuries transparently, or to risk repeating this same cycle. Because as much as expansion and parity can boost the league, nothing captures attention like a transcendent superstar, and Clark has proven herself to be just that. If the league wants to sustain this momentum, it must evolve. Officiating standards need to rise. Part-time refs and inconsistent enforcement cannot define a league on the rise. Player safety must be prioritized. Even when it means sidelining stars temporarily, the messaging around injuries has to improve. Fans deserve honesty, not vague day-to-day labels that only build frustration when the reality turns out far worse. The fever pitch of 2024 showed what's possible. Sold-out arenas, national debates, cultural crossover moments. The challenge of 2025 and beyond is to make that the norm, not the exception. And when Clark returns in 2026, she'll be the ultimate test of whether the league has learned its lessons. Because here's the truth: Clark isn't just another player. She is a movement, and movements deserve protection. Her story echoes others who came before her, superstars whose careers were shaped by how much their leagues protected them. Think of Diana Taurasi, whose prime years helped elevate the Phoenix Mercury. Think of Maya Moore, who became a face of the sport before stepping away for personal causes. Think of Sabrina Ionescu, another hyped college to pro transition who had to battle injuries in her rookie season. In every case, the league's ability or inability to support those stars determine not only individual legacies, but the health of the WNBA itself. Clark's injury-shortened season could become a cautionary tale, or it could be the turning point that forces the WNBA to adapt. The league has weathered storms before. It has seen stars rise, fall, and rise again. What makes this moment unique is scale, the sheer number of new eyes on the product. Because of Clark, this isn't just about keeping a promising athlete healthy, it's about holding onto millions of first-time fans who tune in because of her. Lose them, and the league risks stalling its momentum. Keep them, and women's basketball enters a golden era. And make no mistake, Clark herself will be ready. Her work ethic, competitiveness, and love of the game are unmatched. Those who know her best say sitting out is only fueling her fire. By the time she returns, she won't just be the same Caitlin Clark, she'll be stronger, sharper, and more determined to prove that her story can't be written off as a what-if. That's the narrative arc fans crave: the comeback, the redemption, the unfinished business. The Fever will embrace it, the league will market it, and fans will rally around it. But to truly move forward, the WNBA must recognize the dual truth revealed by this season. Yes, the league is growing broader and deeper, but yes, it still needs its megastars. Expansion teams and dynasties keep the sport healthy, but cultural icons like Caitlin Clark make it explode. That's the balance. Build a stable league, but never forget to guard the players who make people care. The reflection is clear: momentum can't be squandered, and players can't be taken for granted. The rebuild isn't just about Clark's return, it's about the WNBA deciding what kind of league it wants to be. Does it want to stay reactive, putting out fires when they appear, or does it want to be proactive, building the infrastructure, the officiating standards, and the transparency that protects players and earns fan trust? The answers will shape not just Caitlin Clark's career, but the future of the league itself. Because if the WNBA truly wants to cement itself as a permanent fixture in American sports culture, it can't simply hope for stars like Clark to shine. It must create an environment where they're nurtured, protected, and allowed to thrive. Only then can the league turn one player's phenomenon into a sustainable movement. And when Clark takes the court again, when the cameras roll, the arenas fill, and the chants echo, it won't just be her comeback. It will be the league's chance at redemption, too. Caitlin Clark's journey is far from over. Her comeback will define not only her legacy, but the WNBA's direction. This is more than basketball, it's a cultural shift. The question isn't whether she'll rise again, but whether the league will rise with her. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more deep dive sports stories. Your support keeps these conversations alive.